How can we be more effective in advocating for reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and improving sustainability? Tonight, we're going to learn the keys to successful advocacy and lobbying with Becky Simon of the League of Women Voters of Naperville. Becky is the recent past president of the Naperville League and now is the director of the Issues and Advocacy team with the local league. So I'll let you take it over here, Becky. Thanks.
Thanks, Kathy. Yes, I am the Director of Issues and Advocacy for the League of Women Voters of Naperville. I'm also a second generation League member. So Kathy just went through your mission statement. I want to go through ours. Our mission is educating voters and defending democracy. So advocating for our issues and causes, that comes under defending democracy. League is nonpartisan. We have never, ever supported or opposed a candidate for public office, but we act and take positions on issues that are important to us. The Naperville League has a long history of being involved in environmental issues. We were one of the first organizations to push for household recycling in Naperville. We also worked for the cleanup of lead shot in Sportsman's Park. So we care about environmentalism a lot. Myself, I grew up in a highly polluted community, Waukegan. So it's been a very visible issue to me since I was a small child. So next slide. Tonight, we're going to talk about what you can do to influence your elected officials on issues that are important to you. Your influence begins with your vote. That's where it starts. So it's not just your right to vote, it's your responsibility to vote. You need to be an educated voter. We are 8 days away from the primary election. Make sure that before you vote, you know what is on your ballot, you know who the candidates are. All races and referenda are important. Next slide. Be an active voter. You can actively support your candidates and your issues, put up a yard sign, wear a button, wear a t-shirt, post on social media, but please be nice. There is enough ugliness out there. We don't need any more. You can hold an event for a candidate. You can attend an event for a candidate. You can donate to a campaign. You can volunteer for a campaign and write a letter to the editor. You see the email down there? Karen Sorensen, the editor of the Naperville Sun. Send her a letter. She needs to hear from people who are not named Becky Simon. And the picture you see here, I just have to mention somebody who really cared about voting, Ellen Annette Martin, the first woman to vote in Illinois, was in Lombard in 1891. And she went into a polling place and demanded a ballot. They had to give it to her, and then they changed the election code in DuPage County, or in Lombard. Next slide. This is my last bit on voting. I need to tell you, don't believe the big lie. You can trust your elections in Will County and DuPage County. The Naperville League, we are total civics geeks. So we watch elections up close. We go to equipment testing, ballot certification, ballot chain of custody, election storage facilities and warehouses. We watch recounts and the court hearings around recounts. We watch vote by mail processing. We watch vote by mail ballot chain of custody, election judge training. You can trust your elections. What you see here is the Will County ballot box called the Beast. This is their biggest ballot box. It's out in front of the election offices. And there is a bipartisan team of judges here. One is an R, one is a D. I have no idea who's who because they're dressed identically, but they're emptying a sealed ballot box and they will reseal it when they're done. If you live in DuPage County, on election day, you can vote in person anywhere. You no longer have to go to your assigned polling place. You can now go and vote anywhere. Next slide. Okay, talking with your elected officials. This is where it gets meaty. Lobbying is where you try to influence legislation, regulation, or a government decision. Advocacy is where you're speaking in favor of an issue. You're arguing for a cause. So why is this important? It is because your elected officials are not mind readers. They do not know what you're thinking unless you talk to them. Remember that their staff are the gatekeepers. State officials, anybody above county board is going to have staff. You will need to work with the staff to get an appointment with your elected official. So be nice to the staff people. Be just as nice to them as you are to the elected. And to everybody, be civil and polite. Respect the elected's private space. I keep hearing stories more and more lately of unhappy constituents showing up in front of electeds' houses or harassing them in restaurants. That's not productive. That doesn't do well for your cause. Remember the purpose for your potential meeting. You could be building a relationship or discussing an issue of concern. So League meets annually with all of our electeds. Here we are meeting with State Senator Laura Ellman in the spring. There is Susan Greenwood, chairperson of our environmental committee, myself, Senator Ellman, and the currently president, Susan Craighead. So we know them, they know us. They expect we're going to come by every spring and talk. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we just agree to disagree. But we come by every spring and talk with them, and we listen to them. Next slide. So attitude is everything. Smile, be polite, be respectful, be positive, persistent, and regular. So in this slide here, you see my friend Leslie, and she's smiling. She's holding a sign she originally carried in 1976 when we naively hoped that the Equal Rights Amendment would be passed. She's still smiling. She's not hollering, even though she carried the sign in 1976 and ERA was first proposed almost 100 years ago in December 1923, and it's still not in the US Constitution, but Leslie's still smiling because that's what works in advocacy. Next slide. Okay, do your homework. Going into a meeting unprepared is a waste of your time and it's a waste of their time. When you're going to talk with someone, whether it is a city council member, a state elected, or a congressperson, spend some time to do your homework. Look at what committees they're on. In the case of Naperville City Council, you would want to see what boards or commissions they're the liaison for. Check out their voting record, see what legislation they've sponsored, have questions ready, and be ready to answer questions. They're going to ask you questions too. Next slide. So for state legislators, you want to go to ilga.gov. Here you see a slide of Senator Curran. We talk with him every year. Nice guy. And you can look down at the bottom, see it says committee assignments. Up at the top, to the right of his bio, you can see the bills that he's sponsored and the committees that he's working on. Those are always good to know. Next slide. So looking up your congressman, you can go to congress.gov or senate.gov. Look up your congressman there. And again, you will see the committees that they're serving on. Well, look at this. Adam Kinzinger is on the January 6th Attack Committee. So next slide. Be self-aware. Know your issue. Don't go in to ask about solar panels and talk about solar panels if you're not well versed in solar panels. You want to be a respected source of factual information so that you can give that elected official a solid reason why they should support your issue and vote in favor of your issue. Naperville, I like to say, is in many ways still a small town. So your public image and your social media presence precedes you. They know who they're sitting down with. A bad reputation will close doors and a good reputation will open doors. If I sound like a mom, it's because I am. Next slide. When you're looking at legislation, whether it's state or federal, remember it moves very slowly. So be prepared to be patient. Things have to go through committee, they have to get sponsors. Make sure you contact all of the electeds who represent your area. We have complicated districts, so make sure you contact everyone who represents your area. And because it is a long, slow process, be ready to educate new legislators as they cycle through. You might spend 2 years working with Congressman Smith on water quality, and then boop, he's out of office. Somebody new is in. You've got to start over again and be ready to educate them. When you're trying to persuade somebody, don't be afraid to be personal. If you can use anecdotes, stories that tug at people's heartstrings, that is persuasive. The last thing here is very important. Listen to the elected. Make sure you make time to hear what they have to say and what their position is on an issue. Identify their concerns. So why aren't you in favor of water quality? What can we do to overcome that? Next slide. Make a handout to leave behind. Keep it to 1 page. Make sure there's some graphics or some pictures on here. Splurge on the color printing. Make it FAQs and highlights. This is half of a handout, was a 2-pager for 708 mental health boards that will hopefully be on your ballots in November. So this is a good example of what you want to be able to leave behind with an elected. It's got links to websites, etc. Next slide. Oh, not all communication has the same impact. So here you see a real live picture of some very impactful communication. We were in Springfield to talk with our state elected officials about passing the ERA, which passed in Illinois, but barely. So this was a time when an in-person meeting was essential. They were getting ready to take a vote. We wanted to make sure they heard us. So we got on buses and we went down there. In this case, it worked. Next slide. So most impactful to least impactful. An in-person meeting is always the most impactful. It's easier to get a hold of an elected in their home district, but if you're willing to drive to Springfield, they take notice. Take a picture for your social media, share it with them, make them look good. Virtual meetings, a little less effective. If you're going to make a phone call, make sure it is unscripted. I have been told by staff members that scripted phone calls just don't carry the same weight. Snail mail still gets people's attention because hardly anybody does it anymore. For state legislation, you can file a witness slip, and they do pay attention to witness slips. Staff and electeds keep track of witness slips. Email is the least effective way to reach out to your elected. I like to say COVID killed email. I hate opening up my inboxes in the morning. It's just all this email falling out at my face, screaming for my attention. So next slide. Okay, here is a sample from ilga.gov on how to file witness slips. This witness slip, it only has 6 proponents and 1 opponent for this particular bill, SB 0505. So you can go online at any time and look up witness slips and file witness slips. It's a good indication of whether or not legislation has any legs and will ever make it out of committee. Next slide. Oh, Giving comment at public meetings. There's several ways you can do this. Standard municipal public meetings, or say county board or school district, it's easy to sign up and give comment. But as Councilwoman Sullivan shared with the league 2 weeks ago, most of the discussion, decision-making, and horse trading is done before those meetings actually take place. So it's not going to be a Mr. Smith goes to Washington moment for anybody. You really need to make the effort to talk with your electeds before they have the meeting where they will vote. And again, be prepared to answer questions. Next slide. Okay. Mary Todd Lincoln wearing the ERA button. I love this one. So if the elected supports your issue, you should still go and meet with them. They need to know that they have your support. They need to know this to share with other legislators and with their donors. It also gives them good publicity. And leave the FAQ sheet. Next slide. If the elected does not support your issue, still go and meet with them. Listen to their side. I have been in some of these meetings. I sat in one where the elected had opposition literature on their desk aimed at us throughout. But we agreed to disagree. We thanked them for their time, and we left an FAQ sheet. Don't burn your bridges. Don't poke the bear. Always leave room for them to come back and talk with you again. Next slide. Okay, interorganizational networking. If anybody is voting in person in DuPage County, you will be using this piece of equipment, and it was brought to you by interorganizational networking. DuPage County's e-poll books had reached the end of their lifespan. They were no longer supported by the manufacturer, but the county board was hesitating on procuring new functional voting equipment. So we formed an alliance with NAACP, National Council of Jewish Women, and the AAUW, and we just kept going to the county board meetings and hammering on this. And lo and behold, functional election equipment. So interorganizational allies and work is crucial. It gives you more leverage, more volunteers, and more visibility. Next slide. Okay, I love this one. These ladies actually stopped here in Naperville in 1910, 10 years before women got the right to vote. Can you see a theme here tonight? They had amazing media coverage. These ladies worked the newspapers before they started off on this tour. It was a 10-day tour of Northern Illinois cities. They had 10 days of headline news in the Chicago Tribune. So know your media connections, keep their contact in your phone, be nice to them. Make it easy for them to do their job. Right now, the Naperville Sun has this many reporters covering Naperville. So if you can make it easy for them to do their job by sending pictures, news tip, press releases, you're going to get more coverage for your issue. And again, letters to the editor. A lot of people do still read those, and people who vote on the dais read those. Next slide. Oh, here's one of our recent letters to the editor. And you can see it was a joint letter from AAUW, League of Women Voters, Illinois Now, and the National Council of Jewish Women. We were advocating for the crazy notion of being polite at school board meetings. So don't be afraid to write a letter to the editor. You kind of want to have it in by Wednesday at 5 p.m. to make the Sunday paper. Another tip, your letters to the editor should be from different people. It can't be the same name signing the letter all the time. Next slide. Okay, publicity. They say there's no such thing as bad publicity. I don't know. Use your social media, but keep it positive. Please keep it positive. Don't be afraid to have a rally or a protest or put up signs. Next slide. Okay. So in closing, I want to say the primary elections are June 28th, 8 days away. They are important. You need to vote. So upcoming for League of Women Voters, we're going to have a virtual event on coal power in Naperville on Wednesday, July 13th at 7 p.m. You can go to our website to register. And before that, we will be back at the Municipal Band Concert running the bake sale on Thursday, June 30th, which will be the 4th of July concert. This year, they have 6 cannons, 6 Civil War cannons we're going to get to hear go off. So thank you very much. Does anybody have any quick questions? No?
That was awesome. I learned a lot. That was really great. Becky has another meeting she has to get to, but if anyone has like one quick question, anybody?
All right, I'll say thank you for your time, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
See you
That was
soon,
great.
Kathy. Bye-bye.
Yeah.